Hello there. Thank you for joining me once again. We are at episode 2. We are going to be discussing the Duran Duran debut album. Hello, Mike.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you everyone for watching episode 1. So naturally, we're on episode 2.
Exactly. And as I said, we're going to be talking about Duran Duran. Now, I have this prop with me. This is obviously the deluxe edition. Mike's going to show you a bunch of other stuff. My excuse is that, as I stated in the first video, my brother had all the vinyl, and I'm going to go bug him for that vinyl so I can have it too.
A couple of bits. It's not exhaustive, of course. We're talking about an album here that's 45 years old. But I have my very first copy of this.
Awesome.
Dating back to 81 with To the Shore, first UK sort of
I'm glad you mentioned that.
release. However, I know it's not from 81 because it's a part of the EMI Fame label, which is up there. This was bought for me. So this was Christmas 84. So my track of getting the albums was Rio in 82, Seven the Ragged Tiger in 83, and then Christmas 84, I got the first album and Arena. So from that point on, I bought all the albums on first day of release. But yeah, so that's the first one. With all the graphics and liner notes and what have you. First release, or my first version of the album on CD, which came out in 83. And this has, Is There Something I Should Know? So this is following the American release.
Right. So we should mention, for those that don't know, it was a 9-track album. Then later, Is There Something I Should Know replaced To the Shore. And the order was a bit different too, to accommodate that change. The first album in its original release would be Girls on Film, Planet Earth, Anyone Out There, To the Shore, 4th.
Yep.
Careless Memories, Night Boat, Sound of Thunder, Friends of Mine, and Tel Aviv closes it off.
Yep.
Now, when they went to the version with Is There Something I Should Know, it was Girls on Film, Planet Earth, Anyone Out There, Careless Memories at 4, and then Is There Something I Should Know at 5th, The Night Boat, Sound of Thunder, Friends of Mine, Tel Aviv.
Yeah. And on that release, Something I Should Know stands out like a sore thumb.
Sonically,
it's the stepping stone between Rio and Seven and the Ragged Tiger. You can see the roots of continuum that kind of follows the band through all the releases. But by the time they got to Something I Should Know, the band sound had developed so much that when you put it on an album with the first the first album tracks, it's like, it's not quite the same.
And it's worth noting that, well, the band knew that, because if you buy the Seven and the Ragged Tiger deluxe version, Is There Something I Should Know is on that. They did not put it on the deluxe version of the first Duran Duran album, which maybe that disappointed some people. And on that note, I just want to mention as well that the 4 tracks that were a part of that Duran Duran album, the debut, would be Late Bar, Canada, Fame, and Faster Than Light.
That's it.
Yeah, and obviously a bunch of remixes, a bunch of 12-inch special.
We'll get to those in a second. So
we will.
So I've got this, which came out just after COVID. I think this is 2021.
Oh, yes.
Although it says on the back, the copyright is 2010, but it wasn't released until we were in COVID, when all bands and artists were releasing back catalogue stuff with coloured vinyl. So this is a limited edition white vinyl.
Yeah.
So you get the original album, and then you get a bonus 12-inch, which is basically Planet Earth night version, Girls on Film extended night version, and then the second side is the Planet Earth night mix and the Girls on Film night mix.
Yeah.
But I've not opened it. I should check it, but it can stay in there for now. But it's a limited edition double vinyl. Yeah.
I've heard that you shouldn't keep them in that outside plastic too long, because it could it could warp the record a little bit. And I want to see the white vinyl. So
you want to see the white vinyls? I'm not going to open it now.
No, not now.
For a later edition, maybe. But yeah,
You
I
know.
will check them because I've not checked them. But so then, digging out all of that stuff, I then found all my 12-inch singles. So I will give a very, very quick, compressed version of the story for these.
Okay.
So obviously for the album, we've got Planet Earth with Late Bar, and that's a night version of Planet Earth, of course. Then there's Careless Memories and Canada
Yeah.
and Fame. Fame's on there as well. Uh, And that, a point for any band doing covers, it's all well and good making your 12-inch singles and albums with white covers. After 45 years, they don't look so white, okay? So there's Girls
Yeah.
on Film with the Girls on Film night version and Faster Than Light.
Yeah.
And then we have that 12-inch, which is the night version of My Own Way,
Oh,
which
I
will
love
connect
that.
this episode to the next episode. And obviously on there, we've got the short version of My Own Way and Like an Angel.
Oh, like an angel. Whew, we're
There
getting
we
ahead,
are.
but yes, loving
We
it.
are. You can cut that bit out and put it at the end.
Oh, no, I probably won't. And that already brings me to my first point. I feel like we're already diving deep, and I just hit play. This Duran Duran Deluxe Edition, the one I had shown, has a really bad flaw in the front. If you listen carefully, maybe you're listening with headphones, it sounds like, oh, wait a minute, it's so low, what's going on? And then there's this like mangling sound, and then it kind of comes into the regular volume. It's horrible. I
Yeah.
can't believe that the quality control wasn't there. Who?
Andy Taylor said
Ah,
pretty much the same thing when it came out. He said, I can't believe they've gone to all this effort of making this really lovely box set and they've completely trashed the first song. And how did no one notice?
somebody did not send it to the band, because I can't imagine that
That wouldn't have
Nick
got
of
past
all
Mr.
people.
Rhodes. No.
Yeah, I can't imagine that Nick of all people would have listened to that and said, whatever. That is just a travesty. I just cannot believe that that happened. Hate to start it off negatively, but Girls on Film.
Yeah.
Where were we when we first heard Girls on
Whoa.
Film?
I would have been 9 years old. And I think it probably would have been on a kid's TV show in an afternoon or a weekend. In fact, actually, I think I can tell you for anyone in America and elsewhere in the world. So for years, from about 77, 76, 77, up until March, April 82, we had a Saturday morning kids TV show on the BBC here called Multicolored Swap Shop. Obviously, in that box set, there are various TV appearances from the band when they were on there.
You mentioned
And
that show last week, and I'm glad you
yeah,
brought it up again.
so BBC had their program, ITV had their program, which was called Tiswas, which was mad. It was like a like a clown circus of a program. The BBC program was a little more ordered. But in 82, so these programs would basically run from like September through till March, and then they'd that would be like a series, and then the BBC would put on something during the summer months because generally kids would be out playing. They wouldn't be sat at home watching the telly. By the time we got through to September, sort of late August, September 82, that had changed from Multicolored Swap Shop into Saturday Superstore. Same concept, similar sort of thing, but without the swap shop concept that was in Multicolored Swap Shop. But
Yeah.
all of the bands that were big at the time would always target these programs either to do performances or to show their video premieres, or they would go on and do phone-ins and talk to the fans.
Okay.
There's a quote from John in his book, and I think he said there were a couple of those kids' TV shows where they literally hadn't gone to bed from the Friday night before. And it was booze and I could be misquoted here, so let's
Okay.
check before we put it. It could be the booze and drugs that was keeping them going, and they were literally waiting to finish the program so they could go to bed.
Oh my goodness.
such were the times. But so we had Multicolour Swap Shop, Saturday Superstore, and then Superstore, it either ended in 85, but I think it was 87. And then it became a program called Going Live. And then Going Live ran through till mid 90s, I think. And then it became something else and something else. But Girls on Film, for me, was on the program that filled in the summer months in 81. So I think it was an in-studio performance, but, you know, the band were in promotion mode.
Right.
And I hadn't seen the video at that point. I don't even think the video came out immediately when the single was launched. I think they wanted to see how the single was going to take off, because Careless Memories had done nothing. That stalled at like 36 or 38, I think, in the chart. Mm-hmm. So the record company obviously thought, well, you know, they're going to do big things, but the album hadn't come out. The album didn't come out until Girls on Film came out. So they'd had Planet Earth, and Planet Earth had gone to #1 in Australia. Careless Memories had come out and had been a dud. And then they were probably looking at it going, well, we're playing all this money into this band, so let's hope Girls on Film does something. And someone in the band, I think the management, John, Nick, Simon, they were going through these clubs in LA. I think they were supporting Blondie. And they were seeing video screens in the discos, in the clubs. I'm thinking, if we can get onto those screens, it's basically free advertising.
Yeah.
And someone thought, well, let's get Godley and Cream on.
Yep.
Do the regular video, and then we'll do a alternative video. And lo and behold.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have a dichotomy happening here, because you saw Girls on Film in what was in effect a kids show in a sense. Mm-hmm. And I remember Girls on Film being the video that I saw, the big video I saw when I was a little kid, and I saw boobs, because I saw that X-rated version because I had some older neighbors that, you know, showed it to me. So
I didn't see the extended video until the VHS came out. So the Video Hits album didn't come out till 83. That would have been just after Is There Something I Should Know came out. But EMI were one of the forerunners for putting band videos on a VHS. So you might get two videos. And it was Girls on Film, Hungry Like the Wolf, 2 tracks, VHS. And they used to sell them for like £5 or $5, I don't know. But it was to stimulate the VHS market. Instead of paying £12 or $12.50 for a Rocky 3, you might pay $5 for 2 videos by the band your kid likes.
Right.
I guess.
That also reminds me of another sort of phenomena. I don't know if there was anything like this in the UK. Please let us know. There were these, I just used to call them comic book shows, and they were usually held in quite large areas, probably 50 vendors in one space. And a lot of them had bootlegs. So you go to the right person and just a bunch of bootlegs. And so some of those were procured in that manner.
Well, here's a very small nugget. In 1988, it was the day after my birthday. I just bought my first bass combo that morning. I went shopping in London, and I was going out to get sheet music books. So at the time I was looking for Queen ones, Duran, Level 42. I managed to get Hot Space, which now is a little bit collectible. We were going along the shops in Oxford Street, and a lot of the shops, you would go in the doorway, and the shop, you'd sort of go through the doorway and turn right, and that's the upper floor of the shop. There would then be basements, and I learned very early on, if you went in the basements, that's where you could buy things like leather trousers and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There was a shop down there, and my drummer friend Jamie went up and bought something, and the guy said to him, "Are you after any bootlegs?" And I overheard it. I said, "Bootlegs? You got bootlegs?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What bootlegs have you got?" He said, "What bands do you like?" I said, "Well, Queen, Duran Duran." And he pulled out this huge catalogue, and it just went whack on the desk, on the counter.
Nice.
He said, "Have a look through there." And I started flipping through it, and you're seeing all these artists. So literally, he had like a filing cabinet with all these bootleg cassettes. And as people bought them, he'd then contact his mate and get another copy in. I got to the Duran Duran bit, and there was literally like 20 pages of almost every gig certainly every gig they'd done in the UK in this thing. And I said to him, can I have that Electric Ballroom Leicester Square from '87? It was the
Yeah.
warm-up show before they did the 3 nights at Wembley. I've
Yeah.
still got the cassette, and it's immaculate. So it's what is available out there in bootleg world as the Leicester Square Electric Ballroom '87 show.
Okay. Help a Yankee out here
Hmm.
because I would see that place and I know I would butcher the pronunciation. Please say that slowly. The one that starts with an L.
Leicester.
Leicester. Because
Yeah, and
it looks like it says,
you'll call it Leicester.
yeah, or
Yeah.
Leicester. That was easier to
Stacey will
remember for
love
me.
this. She does that all the time.
That's the Leicester
Pronounce it.
show.
No,
Leicester.
Leicester.
Everybody, now we know how to say it.
Think of it as Lester. Leicester.
Awesome. A quick Girls on Film story before we
Mm,
move on to the next track.
yeah.
That requires me to get my bass guitar.
What a beauty. I think that color of SB 1000 is my favorite. I love the red.
It is pretty nice. And
Yeah.
really, it was a fluke that I got it because I wanted a natural one or a black one. Everybody wants the
I'll do
black
you a
one,
swap.
right? So my Girls on Film story is that at this point, I was already playing bass, but I wasn't really that good. And I was just annoying everybody around me, particularly my brother. And I have a vivid memory of me playing Girls on Film or thinking I was playing it. And I was probably doing something like this. And that sounds okay, but it's not right. And I remember my brother saying, I don't know. I don't think you have it. And I said, bullshit, bullshit. Listen, man, listen, you're not listening. You don't know. I know. I'm playing now. And then it wasn't until way later when I got into the 12-inch that I realized that he's going.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized much later that I still had it wrong because for all you bass players out there, it is a A-B thing. He's going. Then the second time he goes. So that is just this weird thing. I'd love to ask John, why'd you come up with that?
That was the thing with buying the 12 inches was suddenly you could hear all the bass lines because they were so upfront in the mix compared to the album and single versions.
Yep.
And you could hear if there was a bass figure or a little motif, they would milk the hell out of it in the night versions.
Right.
So it suddenly meant trying to put those bass lines together. I hadn't started playing bass when I bought those 12 inches. That started 3 months later. So then I'm sat in my bedroom thinking, right, I need to start being able to play John Taylor lines.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking, don't bother with the album version. Listen to the night version.
Yeah.
And you can hear it all a lot better.
Exactly. So let's move on to the next track, Planet Earth.
Where it all started for us as members of the public, obviously not for the band. They've been around for 3 years already.
Right. And who could forget the video? They're standing on some kind of like diamond or some kind of like Superman fortress or something.
I tell you what, they got so it's not luck. I think some of these things are fortune. The fact that they came into contact with Russell Mulcahy at the very start of their career.
Yep.
So he, probably from his perspective, he was part of the team as much as the management were. He had the vision for what these videos were going to be like. No, video was still relatively new. Bo Rap had been out for 6 years at that point, but he had the foresight, as did the management, to think Planet Earth does well. Got #1 single in Australia. Then obviously Godley and Cream did Girls on Film.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I mean, I've not seen an interview with Russell where he talks about this. Maybe there is one, I don't know. If people are watching, if there is one, leave a comment in the comment section. But after Girls on Film, next video was My Own Way, he must have been thinking going into 82.
Yeah.
Was there a conversation with the record company or the management to say, how do we now go next level? Because Hungry Like the Wolf, Save a Prayer, and Rio are three of the most indelible memories, video memories of the 80s.
Yeah.
So at what point were they having the conversations that this is what we're going to do? Maybe it was a very short-term thing once they knew what the singles were going to be on the album.
Yeah.
I don't know. But they got lucky that he was part of their story so early on, because he must have felt like, well, I've got a vested interest in how this band do.
And as far as the music is concerned, one thing I wanted to mention, as a young boy, I was, maybe all young boys are this way, but I was attracted to flashing lights, synthesizers, and things that pan and phase.
No,
and
it's just you.
It's just me. And Planet Earth starts with that.
Yeah, and the text going across the screen.
Oh my God. So to me, it was like this perfect blend of Buck Rogers at the time, you know, watching reruns of the 80s Buck Rogers show with Gil Gerard. And
Aaron Gray.
And Aaron Gray. Oh my, wait a minute.
Let's not even go there. That could be an episode on its own. Just stop right there.
But I have to say, Aaron Gray was my first love.
Oh.
I had such a crush on her. I started to become upset with anybody she was on film with. That's how unreasonable I was.
She might see this. You might get a little message.
Okay, so let's.
Yeah. So what I was going to say to you is, you being of a similar vintage to me, how Planet Earth, Girls on Film, Careless Memories, into My Own Way, which we'll get to at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Those video images, that style of editing, the dropping down of screens, dropping down of graphics, that has stayed with me my whole life.
Yep.
Videos that, or even any sort of production or video on YouTube or anything that kind of, you can see if it's got a Russell Mulcahy influence.
Yeah.
I'm sold, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
That form of editing, that kind of imagery, it sits with me now. Here we are.
Yeah.
Where are we? 45 years after that.
It's still so
I can remember
appealing.
first time I saw it. Would have been February. Probably was Top of the Pops. I can't remember if they appeared or if the video was shown, but I remember seeing the video on a lot of TV programs.
Yeah.
And it was like, Well, for me, it's what instantly something turned on in the brain to go, you need to watch this band.
Yeah, so it again, I know we mentioned this last week, but it wasn't just the music, even though I wouldn't have gotten this far with the band had it not been for the music, because that's what hooked me.
Yes.
But those visuals were just tying in perfectly to what I was experiencing as a kid, this sort of space age yet punk thing, and then the way they were dressed was like no other. So it was a very unique experience, and I wanted to be a part of that.
I wouldn't undervalue also here in the UK. So what was I? I was 8 years old. How important at that time smash hits was. And once they started getting Duran Duran on the cover, it was like the two were symbiotically linked. You couldn't have smash hits without Duran Duran. You couldn't have Duran Duran without smash hits. But also, we had a magazine here at the time called Lookin'. So we had a TV guide here called TV Times, and we had the radio times. So you had radio times for the BBC channels, TV Times for ITV, which was the independent TV channel. Lookin' was the junior version of TV Times. So it basically advertised all the series that would appeal to children and teenagers on ITV. Duran Duran fell slap bang into Lookin' like they did with Smash Hits. So suddenly there were pictures of them, interviews with them. They eventually in 85 did like a weekly comic strip on it, which we can find online. They were one of those bands that suddenly they did a band profile, because the magazine came out every week. So you had Simon one week, John the next, Andy the next, and you could cut them out and put them on your wall. It was basically a ready-made poster in comic form. So the fact you had the band all over Smash Hits and all over Lookin' and all the other magazines that there were at the time, it's like free advertising. They were
Yeah.
everywhere. But at that time in 81, Adam and the Ants were huge. I forgot to mention on last week's episode, I was saying the music we were listening to at the time, the Police were everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
You
definitely.
couldn't turn the radio on and not hear the Police. And
Yeah.
after we filmed last week, I thought I didn't even mention the Police.
There,
Yet
there's
that was on all the
there's
time.
so much we didn't mention because
Yeah,
time constraints.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, Police would have been one of those big ones. Just to bring it back to bass for a second, as
Yep.
far as bass is concerned,
What a tone.
what a tone. Yeah. I remember watching Rock School, which was probably just a little bit later, but from my vantage point and how I was discovering them, I remember seeing John on Rock School, and he's specifically talking about playing with a plectrum. And he's talking about how he prefers the sound of fingers, but to play that pattern, very difficult to play with fingers. Right? So he went to the plectrum. It took me a long time to be able to get that feel. So thinking back, I wonder, well, how did he get so good in such a short amount of time?
It's a question I've thought, and I can remember 20 years ago, various musicians I know and knew then saying, "You like Duran Duran? You know they had session musicians on their first album." It's like, well, prove it. But I've never seen quantifiable proof because there aren't any session musicians mentioned on that first album.
I don't think it's true. I remember being about 16 or 17 years old, and one of my bandmates said that he had had dinner. It sounded like a movie story, but he said, "Yeah, I was having dinner at this restaurant, and these producer guys were next to me, and somehow we started talking, and he said, 'Oh yeah, Duran Duran, they're one of your favorite bands. Those guys just get drunk and they party all night, and while they're sleeping, real musicians are playing their parts.'" I remember that story really hurting me, and I thought, what? That can't be true. No. I felt like Luke Skywalker, No.
But the thing is, back then, loads of bands that happened. How many Kiss tracks aren't actually most of Kiss playing on it?
Right. Okay. Here is where it all fell apart for me, meaning I stopped believing that story. I hadn't seen the, I guess, 1981 to 82 New Year's performance in New York.
Yep.
And that is as live as it can be. I don't believe that they could not be good enough to play their instruments in 80, 81, and then all of a sudden be good enough to play for that show completely
Correct.
live. I mean, you can see John switch between fingerstyle and pick, and it's synced in time perfectly, and we didn't have many clever ways to edit and hide stuff. I mean, they are playing live. The tone is the same.
There is that thing, though, and I agree with this because I can remember it for myself. When you're younger, you progress.
Put your teeth in,
When
Mike.
you're younger, put teeth in. Hey. When you're younger, you progress very, very rapidly as someone starting an instrument.
True.
Once you've got the basics and you know where the notes are, and you start to get an idea of feel and how to put bass lines together, that initial learning period is rapid.
Yeah.
Like seriously rapid. So it wouldn't surprise me that if they weren't ready when the first singles and album came out, that 12 months later they were, because the record company would say, "You're going in those rehearsal studios and you don't come out until you can play."
Yep.
That wouldn't surprise me. With Andy, it was a different thing. He'd already been on the road touring Air Force bases in Europe.
Right.
So he kind of was already on that. You got to remember, John didn't really take up bass until 79,
Yeah.
80. But there's that rapid thing that if you know chords and you know where notes
It's
are
true.
on the fingerboard, how many guitarists have become bass players, and suddenly that growth spurt on the instrument is very quick. All I know is that first album is killer, and the second one is turbocharged.
Classic. Yeah, exactly. And I think they were really talented listeners as well. If I dared to compare myself directly to John, I would say, well, I was pretty good technically age to age for him, but he was a far better listener because I did not expose myself to as much music as he did. I remember watching that there's a show you guys had in the UK where two bands would compete with each other about pop stuff, and they're
Oh,
on with
pop quiz.
Spandau. Pop
Pop
quiz,
quiz. Yeah.
right? And John's so knowledgeable about music. There's no way I could win a show like that.
You got to remember when they were kids, so what we're talking late 60s going into 70s, there really wasn't a lot to compete for your time. You were either out playing with your mates on your bikes, cutting your knee open, falling off a tree, or you were listening to records,
In
and
there.
or you were doing both. The TV was a relatively new thing, and as a kid, you would sit there and you would watch all this stuff. It's no surprise that people of their generation and our generation gravitated to wanting to be like that. Kids now they couldn't care less. But back then, that was like, wow, that looks fabulous. Music was everywhere. Now music is a background thing. Back then,
Yeah.
music for kids of our couple of generations was everything. For me, it wasn't so much the fame thing. It was, I would just like to be on stage in front of 100,000 people.
Yeah.
that sort of thing, because I knew the excitement from when I was a kid as a 4-year-old, getting on stage and performing in my nursery play. I was 4 years old. That resonated with me from that point, 49 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm no different. I felt that buzz then. I still feel that buzz now when I go on stage.
Right. And in hearing a song like Girls on Film, I can still remember what it feels like as a kid, and even now, but more so then because it was novel, that feeling of, oh, this makes me want to get up and dance. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play this instrument and give people that feeling, because it was so powerful to me.
Well, before we went live today, I was just having a look and checking my facts on the old basses and stuff. So at that time, he came in right at the start when people were starting to use Aria super basses. They'd been out for a couple of years. I think it says Aria as a brand had been around for a long time after the war.
Yeah.
But they really hit their stride around about 77, 78. And obviously in his book, it says why he picked the Aria super bass over everything. If you use something that sounded a bit different and looked a bit different, you were going to stand out. Little did he know, virtually everyone through the first half of the 80s suddenly wanted to use an Aria super bass. But
it was probably his fault, though.
Well, there was that as well, because people were hearing, you could put Duran Duran drum and bass tracks on as a single and a vocal on top without guitars and keys.
Yeah.
And people would still buy it. People would dance to that in a club.
Totally.
Or whatever. And it really, we said it last week on the first episode, that syncopation in that rhythm section caught our ears, it caught the world's ear.
Yep.
And it's that, although it took America a little more time to get on the bus, it took the visual thing, the MTV thing.
Yeah.
But once that fuse got lit properly, well, it hasn't stopped over there really, apart from what we were saying last week with the that period in the very early 90s. But the Aria thing, you've got a bunch of them, I've got a couple here. They are what they are. Some people they don't work for, but they have a tone of their own.
That woodsy thing, nothing sounds like. Yeah.
And he was running all this through. It's the PV Musician Mark III. This is in AI overview, so we might need to check. This amplifier, along with his main instrument, was central to developing his distinct mid-range forward tone that cut through the mix of their early recordings and live performances. But if you look at any of the videos, any of the live videos from 82, you never see any amplification on stage. 82, 83, 84.
Right.
85. Right. 85 at Live Aid, he had an Ampeg set up because he was doing the whole American rock star thing.
We might be able to fact check that with looking for a YouTube video I once saw where they're playing like some kind of college campus. It looks very early. They definitely have their planet Earth regalia, and I remember seeing a PV amp on stage.
But generally on their own tours, Andy's backline was always, there weren't any cabinets, I recall, but he always had a stack of amplifiers in a rack facing him so he could change stuff if he needed to.
Right.
But John's stuff never seemed to be there. I don't know if his tech was doing it or something else, but maybe he's just not a fiddler.
A knob twiddler, as some might say.
So third track.
Anyone out there? man, do I love that song. It's just such a cool song, and it's romantic as well. It creates a certain emotion. As a little kid who's just starting to discover, just growing up, it's the perfect song for that. You are feeling that way. Is there anyone out there? Like, is there anyone that feels the way I do? Why do I feel this way? School, girls, friends. I mean, it's just this
For
time.
me, it takes me back to Christmas '84. It was one of the very first songs in Sing Blue Silver.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
that Christmas '84 for me was so many wonderful things. Getting that album, getting Arena, Drama at their peak. I got a ZX Spectrum for Christmas for games. It's quite a big deal. That Christmas was the Christmas, and I remember I was in Scotland, so apart from a few kids at school who liked Duran Duran, I had no wider Duran Duran community. It was the Christmas when we got Sing Blue Silver, and the very next night, As the Lights Go Down. So you
Wow.
had one night, recorded it because it was on late at night.
Yeah.
I don't think I stayed up, but I watched it. I got up at like 7 o'clock in the morning to watch it, and I just sat there transfixed. It was Duran on tour in '84.
We might have to do two separate
That could be,
episodes on their own about
yeah.
As the Lights Go Down and Sing Blue
Yeah.
Silver.
So I
Yeah.
watched that, and then the very next, well, that night. So in the morning, watch Sing Blue Silver, and then that night record As the Lights Go Down, and the following morning get up at 7 o'clock and watch that, and just have my mind blown. 2 days of sheer Duran, and
Yeah.
but for me, anytime I hear anyone out there, I instantly think of that section at the start, Sing Blue Silver, and that Christmas, and hearing that album, and literally playing that album to death.
It is just such a beautiful song, and the lyrics, I remember the lyrics touching me as well. And as if all that wasn't enough, at the very end, John goes into the plucking. Boom,
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah.
it's
It's
great.
actually quite a sparse song. If you listen to it, how it's arranged and orchestrated, it's a very simple layers
Yeah,
of instrumentation. And that's kind of what makes it work, and why it
yeah,
is special as a part of the Duran canon. They don't
yeah.
play it very often. I wish they would. I wish they'd bring it back in, but
Oh, for sure.
um
That's worth talking about, though, too, that sonically, this first album, don't get me wrong, Nick is definitely in there and he's prominent, but it doesn't have that denseness that would come much later with, let's say,
mhm.
Seven and the Ragged Tiger. Rio obviously was kind of building up towards it, but Rio is kind of that perfection. The first album is that sort of punk sparseness. There is a lot of space. They weren't jamming everything in at that point.
Anyone out there is placed perfectly on that album, because you've already
Right.
had the blitzkrieg of Girls on Film. You've heard Planet Earth, which is the first single, which everyone's gone, oh, I like this band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you get Anyone Out There, and it strips away all the bigness of the first two songs, and
Right.
it shows you the songwriting. It's quite simplistic, but it's perfect in its arrangement and orchestration. It's almost like their perfect pop song.
So we're already getting hit with three incredible songs. You have your dance track, you have your like cool sci-fi track, and then
Yeah.
we have the romantic mood of Anyone Out There. And then, at least in the original version of the album, we have To the Shore. Which was like a secret being discovered years later because I didn't hear To the Shore
Of
until
course.
I believe my brother got an import of an original UK album.
Mm.
It's such a,
It's a dark song.
yeah, it's a dark song, and it sort of makes me feel, I can't think of a better word than drowsy, specifically in
Hmm.
that middle section where John does, it's kind of a bass solo, and it's just that feel of doom doo dee dee doo 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 dee dee doo doo, and it's kind of like almost like the like this, I don't know, like a Middle Eastern feel in this sense
I
where
always
it's,
think of Susie and the Banshees
oh, really?
when I hear To the Shore. Yeah, because I know Simon always kind of knew Susie Sue, and he's always had that sort of darker element up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so whenever I hear To the Shore, I always kind of think it's like that early, late 70s, early 80s, people getting into their goth stride thing. Goth wasn't really a thing until we got into like the early part of the 80s. As a kid, I don't remember too many people walking around being goths. I remember all the punk stuff. And I think a lot of goths naturally moved from being sort of 50% punks into becoming goths. I don't remember seeing a lot of that as a kid. You kind of, as we said before, you had the rockers,
Yeah,
you had the mods, you
yeah,
had your disco soul brigade,
yeah.
and you had kind of your punk lot. And that was kind of it. And then people of my age would be, you'd listen to the radio and you'd be into pop. But as I was growing up, I don't remember goth really becoming a thing until like 81, 82. And also, you showed that clip last week of The Cure on Top of the Pops. I think that's like 80, 81. And they
Yeah,
hadn't even adopted that proper goth look at that
right.
point. So, and then you had bands like The Mission and,
Oh, I love
you
the
know,
mission. Yeah,
Psychedelic Furs, Echo and the Bunnymen, and it
yeah.
was
The
not that they were
Damned.
goths, but it was kind of, you had all of, it's like a family tree of
Yeah.
musical trends and styles.
And I also remember hearing To the Shore, and because I heard it later, I was already in bass guitar frame of mind.
Hmm.
And I remember hearing that middle section I was referring to earlier and thinking, oh, wow, that sounds like a lot of notes. That sounds really complicated. I'm not even going to try to learn it. But in actuality, it's just root, fifth, seventh, and you keep that same pattern. Let's see if I can do it. You just go down
Hmm.
to the G. So it's just that same pattern.
Yeah.
And he's being economical in that sense. And the more I learned his bass lines, the more I realize he's trying to be economical because it's easier to play it. And that's usually what you do. But as
Yeah.
listeners, we tend to complicate things.
Well, sometimes someone will look for the complicated way of playing it if they're not the person that wrote it. And then when you
Exactly.
actually speak to the person that wrote it, they go, oh, no, it's this.
Yeah, no,
And
dude.
it's like, that's half the work.
Yeah. Tune it this way because I'm using open strings. Don't do it that way. Yeah, that's crazy. Right? And then
Yeah.
our next track will be Careless Memories. Here's another track that has that element of planet Earth that really spoke to me. That except
Mhm.
now you have this really tough, dark thing
Mm.
happening. And when I see Duran live and they do it, I love hearing it on the
Mhm.
big speakers.
Andy's playing, and I'd forgotten that actually when you really hone down into it, his playing is so precise on some of these tracks.
He's an amazing rhythm player.
And a really good arranger. Whether this was Colin Thurston's power or it's just Andy took his foot off the pedal, he's really a rock monster.
Yeah.
Yet he was in a band playing extremely precise. There's some clean articulation. He's got all the dirt and the grit. Such an accomplished player
Yeah.
for such a young guy. Listening to these tracks on this first album, fabulous, quite fabulous. If you're watching Andy Taylor.
Andy, hope you're doing well.
Yeah, man.
Also, the thing about Careless Memory is it was a song that you could play to people who didn't love the more pop side of Duran Duran because it's really a rock song.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
That's
fast.
right.
So you could possibly win over a rocker or two by playing them Careless Memories.
A great live track. I remember hearing it in 2004, so I'd never heard them play it until then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just it was like being hit with a hammer. It was just like
I tell you what hit me like a hammer. I believe Astronaut Tour time when they did Careless Memories and then they had those anime visuals.
yes. Yeah.
That was
Did really well with
amazing
that.
to me because I was such a fan of Robotech, which in Japan was called Macross, and it looked like they were doing Robotech while playing Careless Memories. It was
You were
awesome. I was
happy
like,
soul.
oh, I was so happy. Yeah. So moving right along, Nightboat.
Love it.
And
Love it from the first time I ever heard it,
oh,
which would have
definitely
been on the video VHS, the video album.
crazy video, right? Zombies and all kinds of stuff.
Ghosts.
One of the first recordings I ever did on bass, we're talking Jimmy rigging all kinds of stuff and using weird cables and adapters into a tape deck with my first bass, that Red Harmony that my mom had purchased from JCPenney for me. I tried to record that song. I might have it. I'll splice it in here if I can find it. It is horrible, right? I'm just go 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 go.
You were learning.
Oh, it sounded so bad, but for the sake of others who are learning, they can hear what it sounds like to be a beginner.
It can go along with your picture of you with your hairdo, which has had a lot of comments.
For sure. Huh? But yeah, Nightboat, it's another super cool song.
And I'm really pleased they've brought it back on the past couple of tours. I saw it in 2023 at the O2.
I just saw, just last night, a live recording of them. They opened with Nightboat. I remember.
It's the overhang of the Dance Macabre
Yeah,
thing. And
I remember hearing Simon's first vocals were standing on the edge of a key. Well, speaking of words, key? What the hell is the key?
key is the part of when you're on a seafront or a beach and you have a strip of walkway that goes out into the water for boats to moor up against. That's the key.
It's spelled so weird, though.
Q-U-A-Y.
Q-U-A-Y.
It might be Irish. It might be Irish. It's Celtic,
Yeah.
I think.
That was one of the lyrics I remember reading in one of the songbooks or something and thinking, what? It sounds like he's saying key, but this is quay.
You've got to broaden your mind.
Yeah,
I remember seeing
12.
that on the live at Hammersmith. So this will come into next week's video. I saw the Hammersmith thing. So that happened in 82. It was first broadcast, I think, on a program called Rock Around the Clock on BBC Two in August 83. And it would be like from midday until midnight. And it would be loads of music, concerts, videos. It might have been charity based or it might not. But one of their big shouts for that show that year, because they did it again the following year in 84 when they showed the whole of Thriller.
Oh, right.
With all the making of and all that.
Everything.
But in 83, their big claim was, we've got the Duran Duran from Hammersmith 82, the whole show.
Oh, I love that show.
And that I remember watching it and going, Nightboat's amazing. Oh my God. I didn't have the album.
Yeah.
So this was like one of the first times I'd heard it. And when they showed Hammersmith again on, I think it was Channel 4, which was a new channel then, and that would have been in May 84, just after Reflex had gone #1. So then I had my own video copy. We didn't have a VHS until January 84, February 84. So now I have my own videotape with Hammersmith, watched it over and over again. I love Nightboat.
So that lands us at Sound of Thunder.
A favorite.
Big time favorite. Again, it's got the 16th note.
They had all that going on. It's just
and
great. Hey, if you get a good idea, do it again and again
and again and again. and it's so disco. Like that's the most disco song, and it even has octaves. Just flat out straight octaves. In both the keyboard at the beginning and John's actually doing octaves in it afterwards. It's a
clever arrangement.
Clever arrangement, uplifting chord changes, not a boring part in it. Just beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's like Anyone Out There is a simple arrangement. Sound of Thunder is a clever arrangement.
Yeah.
Someone has thought about that, and how do we build it? And there's obviously a germ of an idea, and then it's typical Duran that there's a germ of an idea, and then everyone gets involved, and it just goes bang, and suddenly all the possibilities are there, and then it's a case of sifting through it and getting the best representation of what that's how that band works.
And the bass line in particular in the verse, wow, the notes are so unique, and he's using the full range because he's starting at that low, he gong, 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 and then you're at that G on the D string.
Again, I would have loved to have interviewed Colin Thurston to see how much of an influence he was on John's bass playing. John's pulling in all these musical ideas of things he's listened to and what have you. Who was he talking to in order to learn how to advance his bass playing? The only people I can think of really would have been Andy and Colin. The only other maybe input on that would be Roger's drumming. And as John has said, he and Roger sat there and got the syncopation thing. They communicated it to each other verbally and then did it. So I would suggest those are the three things, unless JT can ever sort of put more meat on the bones and say, actually, no, I spoke to, Mr. John Twaddle, and he was quite an expert bass player in Birmingham, and he told me to do this, this, and this. But I think Andy, musically, and probably Colin Thurston sitting there and saying, I'm the producer, I will guide you through this.
Yeah. JT, if you're out there, you're always invited.
Bernie, pass it on.
Come on, Bernie, get it. That brings us to the second to last track, which is Friends of Mine.
In my top three. For a long, long time, this was my favorite Duran track.
One of the things I love about it, it's got that dark verse, but the choruses are downright uplifting. And then you go right back down to the gonk, donk.
It was the energy from the Hammersmith performance, because again, I didn't have the album video.
Okay, that is worth pointing out. You didn't have the album. You were listening to live versions, and you were falling in love with the material then, which I think is a testament to how good of a live band they were, because usually you are disappointed with the live versions of stuff and you go back to the studio versions. That's usually what happens.
I think a lot of the bands and artists I like, though, are exceptional live bands who were always able to cut it live. So sometimes it was a live performance that I saw on the telly that got me into a band. Duran Duran, great live band. Queen, great live band. Level 42, great live band. Prince, great live band. Chic, Earth, Wind and Fire. All the things I like, great live.
Well, that's the litmus test, right? I mean, they sound great live. They are great.
Sometimes you get that with a band. You hear the studio version, but if you've already known the live one with all the energy and the guts, you think, it's a bit of a damp squib.
Or sometimes bands overreach with the studio version in the sense that they do things that cannot be replicated live. Whereas, especially for the first album, Duran was able to do that. And back then, they didn't have tracks. They didn't have all this stuff.
You had to have the keyboards and the sequences and all the processing to do it.
And that reminds me of something. There's a live version of Anyone Out There where John's bass goes out.
Oh, yes.
And
yes, you have to put that in.
And like this, Nick starts playing the bass on his keyboard. Which goes to show you, even Two Fingers Nick knew his stuff.
Yeah, I'm guessing they did a lot of rehearsing. And I bet EMI said, you better have your shit together. We're giving you the big push.
And then we arrive at our final destination, which is Tel Aviv. Yeah, you've actually gigged there, right?
I have, yeah.
Tel Aviv, there's many different versions, but focusing on the album version, it's almost like they ended the album with a classical piece.
It's quite ethereal.
Yeah, and all those textures
Yeah.
and prominent keyboard bass, but you still hear John in there. And it just builds and builds and builds. And
again, the sort of track that wouldn't sound out of place on an Arcadia show.
Definitely. And this could be overreaching in a sense, but there's that Beatles song. It builds and builds and builds. And at the very end, there's this huge chord.
Oh, Day in the Life.
There you go. And with the piano just going, blong. Mm-hmm. And I get that feeling when Tel Aviv ends because it's like, whoa, Simon's doing all these crazy like chant sort of stuff. And then it just goes, round.
I will go back to Andy's reference here. Listen to his guitar work with headphones on Tel Aviv.
Totally.
It's immaculate.
Yeah, immaculate those lines, they're singing.
I'm sure if Andy listened to it, he'd go, are you deaf? It's not, you're saying that's my finest work. No, that's not what I'm saying. I just think his guitar playing and his orchestration on that track is immaculate.
Yeah.
And I hadn't listened to it in a very, very long time. But predating this video, I went and had a listen with headphones on to the whole album a couple of times. He was undervalued.
Duran does not disappoint with headphone listening.
No,
it
never.
Sounds amazing. I would like to close the episode by thanking everybody for watching. And I would also like to ask for your sympathies somewhat because I woke up so early to make this episode happen. Mike is on London time. Yeah. So I was up quite early because he has a live stream to get to. And I will join in as much as I possibly can for that. Thank you so much for joining us for our second episode of the series, focusing on the first debut album. Hope you had as much fun as we did. Mike, any final closing words?
Yeah. Any comments, any questions, anything we've missed out, please leave them in the comments section below. Please give the video a thumbs up. It's the most important thing you can do for us as YouTube creators. Next episode, the big one. It's weird that you're talking about a band with all these albums and we get to the second album in and it's the big one. So you know what's coming.
See you soon.
See you soon.